are indeed terrifying, but the real stories are even more gruesome. From prison gangs and forced labor to underground criminal networks, the prison system has turned into a dark world with little regard for the law. No matter how much you've heard or what you may have experienced, very few people truly grasp just how extreme it can get. What are the most shocking things that happen in prisons? Join us for this special episode as we explore 20 things nobody tells you about life behind bars. Number 20, prison gangs. Prison gangs are inmate organizations that operate within prison systems, acting like a corporate entity with strict rules and a lifetime commitment for their members. These gangs are exclusive, often racially or geographically divided, and their influence extends beyond the prison walls. The rise of prison gangs is linked to the growing prison population and inmates' need for protection. About 70% of prison gang members are found in California and Texas. These gangs operate like a community responsibility system, where the reputation of the gang, rather than the individual, matters most. Some prison gangs even originate from the streets, while others extend their operations outside the prison, engaging in criminal activities like drug trafficking and violence. Hispanic prison gangs are some of the most prominent. For instance, the Mexican Mafia, or La M, was formed in 1959 in California and has strong ties with street gangs like the Sureños. This gang is involved in various criminal activities, including drug distribution, robbery, and murder, both inside and outside the prison. A black hand tattoo often identifies their members. Nuestra Familia, another Hispanic gang, was formed in the 1960s to oppose La M's dominance and is mainly composed of Northern California Hispanics. The Texas Syndicate, Mexicanimi, and Yetas are other significant Hispanic gangs, each with its own territory and influence. These gangs often clash with each other, but sometimes form alliances, depending on their needs. African American prison gangs typically retain their street gang names and associations. Notable gangs include the Black Guerrilla Family, which started as a politically motivated group, and the United Blood Nation, which has ties with the Black Guerrilla Family. The Folk Nation and People Nation are also prominent, with bitter rivalries. White prison gangs are known for their violent and ruthless behavior. The Aryan Brotherhood, founded in 1969 in San Quentin Prison, is infamous for its extreme violence and white supremacist beliefs. Other white gangs include the Nazi Lowriders, Public Enemy No. 1, and the Aryan Circle. These gangs often serve a latent function within prisons, helping maintain order by controlling rogue elements among the inmates, a role that prison authorities sometimes tolerate due to its benefits. Prison gangs don't just stop at the prison gates. Their reach extends far beyond, connecting with street gangs, organized crime groups, and corrupt individuals on the outside. These gangs are deeply involved in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, money laundering, and even contract killings. Number 19. Hidden economy in prison. Prison life is harsh, but within it lies a hidden economy that's very real and powerful. This underground economy operates much like the outside world, but with its own unique twists. Inmates that don't understand it could end up in serious trouble. Inmates often set up their own stores, selling goods to others. Some even walk around with big necklaces full of money, which makes you wonder how they got it. Hustling never stops in prison. It's a 24/7 operation. Just like on the streets, prison life is dangerous. Inmates get killed, robbed, and caught in risky situations. Some have guns, while others use drugs. During searches, guards often find contraband like cell phones and chargers. In some cases, inmates throw wild parties, shutting their cell doors and daring guards to stop them. One Christmas Eve in 2021, prisoners in Brazil turned their day into a party that looked more like a bachelor bash than a day behind bars. With careful planning, they managed to bring in a DJ and 2 female dancers. Even though prison authorities started an investigation, many questions remain unanswered. Smuggling small items like drugs and phones is one thing, but people, the prison economy is strange, no matter where you are in the world. Inside prison, the economy runs on items instead of cash. Things like ramen noodles, canned food, and toiletries become valuable currency. $1 inside is like $20 outside. Food, tobacco, and other goods can be traded for favors, influence, or more items. For example, ramen noodles are essential for survival in prison, not because everyone everyone loves them, but because they fill the gap left by poor quality meals. The prison economy also includes some darker elements. Ramen noodles, when hardened and sharpened, can become deadly weapons. Cigarettes, once a main currency, have been replaced by toiletries and canned fish. Prices for these items have skyrocketed, especially in places like the UK, where a smoking ban in prisons has made tobacco even more valuable. A pack of cigarette papers that costs just a few pence outside can be worth pounds inside. Drugs are another major part of the prison economy. Prisons are full of drugs, and falling into debt with dealers inside can be deadly. Synthetic cannabis, known as spice, is a huge problem in prisons. It's cheap and nasty on the outside, but dangerous and addictive inside. The debts from using it can lead to violence, sexual assault, or even death. In Ghana, marijuana is so important in prisons that authorities sometimes turn a blind eye to its trade to keep the peace. Number 18. Incarceration in the United States. In 2018, it was estimated that 2.3 million people were locked up in the United States. Out of these, 1.3 million were in state prisons. The U.S. has an incarceration rate twice as high as China's, with prisons operating at 103.9% of their capacity. Colorado is one of the many states struggling with overcrowded prisons. According to a 2019 report, Colorado's prison population was expected to grow by 20.5% from 2018 to 2025, increasing from 20,136 inmates to a projected 24,061. One major reason for overcrowding is that many released offenders haven't received proper rehabilitation, leading them back into the prison system. There is also a shortage of specialized programs, like those for drug and alcohol abuse, that could help inmates reform. Additionally, some crimes don't allow for parole, keeping inmates locked up for long periods, sometimes even for life. The rise in overcrowded prisons leads to serious problems, such as poor health care, increased gang activity, rising mental health issues, violence and racism, the spread of diseases, and high stress for staff. Overcrowding affects resources per inmate, leaving many prisoners idle with nothing to do, which slows their progress toward release. The more prisoners there are, the slower the system moves, worsening overcrowding. This also means the money spent on mass incarceration, $128 billion annually, could be better used in areas like public safety or crime reduction. Alabama, Delaware, and California are prime examples of how overcrowding causes dangerous consequences. In Alabama, one correctional officer might supervise 250 to 300 high-risk inmates for long periods, increasing the risk of violence. In 2011, Alabama saw a 40% rise in inmate violence, leading to serious injuries. In Delaware, overcrowding led to a tragic incident in 2017 at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center, where inmates took 4 officers hostage, resulting in the death of Lieutenant Stephen Floyd. The overcrowded conditions and lack of action on the state's part contributed to the dangers, leading over 100 officers to quit or retire early. Number 17. Routine life in prison. Life in prison can be incredibly boring and repetitive, making it easy for frustration and violence to rise. The routine isn't meant to be fun, but it's so monotonous that it wears down even the strongest minds. For some inmates, sticking to a set schedule is the only way to survive the daily grind behind bars. The day usually starts with basic tasks like brushing teeth, washing up, and getting dressed. Then, at a specific time, breakfast is served. Depending on the prison, this might happen in the cell for those in solitary confinement, or a dining hall for those in the general population. For many inmates, religious rituals are also part of their morning routine. It's interesting how many people turn to religion when they're locked up, but that's just part of prison life. The day's structure revolves around meal times, much like in the outside world. What happens between meals depends on the inmate's sentence, the type of facility they're in, and what kinds of work or educational programs are available. The day is filled with alarms, bells, commands, and noise, with long stretches of boredom in between. Inmates might have books or TV to pass the time, but there are also regular head counts to ensure no one has escaped, followed by more boredom and routine. Laundry, learning, waiting, eating, lockdown, and then repeating it all over again. For some inmates, this routine might be their reality for the rest of their lives. For others, it could just be the next 5th to 7th years. Either way, life in prison is a never-ending cycle of monotony, with little to break up the endless repetition. Number 16. Violence in prisons. Jails and prisons in the U.S. are often overcrowded and poorly staffed, making them dangerous and dehumanizing places. Violence is a common problem, and many people experience or witness abuse behind bars. This can lead to severe trauma and worsening mental health for inmates, as well as for the staff who work there. In Illinois, violence and abuse in the Special Management Unit at Thompson Federal Penitentiary led to its closure. Reports included inmates being chained to their beds for hours. In California, at least 37 people have died in Los Angeles County jails in 2023, and a video showed staff at Men's Central Jail ignoring a violent attack for 14 minutes. In New York, a review found that corrections officers abused inmates by withholding food and using violence, causing serious injuries like broken bones and punctured lungs. These harsh conditions can lead to severe mental health problems. Exposure to violence in prison can worsen existing mental disorders or create new issues like anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately, there are not enough resources or treatment options available to help inmates manage these symptoms. The impact of imprisonment is long-lasting. Many people leave prison in worse physical and mental health than when they entered. Over 95% of inmates will eventually return to society, but the current prison system fails to prepare them for a successful reintegration. Instead, it often produces unfair outcomes, as noted by the Brennan Center for Justice. Number 15. Prison industries. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States, but it allowed for a form of slavery to continue through prison labor. This exception means that while slavery is illegal, it still exists in a different form within the prison system. The Fair Labor Standards Act does not apply to prisoners, which means they are not entitled to minimum wage or other employee protections. For example, in 1966, inmates in California tried to get minimum wage for their prison work, but were denied because they did not meet the FLSA's employee criteria. Similarly, inmates in Arizona sought wages from a plasma center, but the court ruled that neither the center nor the Department of Corrections are qualified as employers under the FLSA. Prison labor varies widely. In California, inmates are required to work as many hours as set by prison rules. Accounts from women's prisons describe harsh conditions, such as long hours of manual labor in extreme heat without proper hydration or sun protection. Dominique Morgan, an ex-inmate, worked as a chef with very low pay and no sick days despite having HIV. Private prisons further exploit inmates. They often deduct fees from inmates' wages for room and board, even though these prisons receive federal funding. This means that private prisons profit both from taxpayer money and from the labor of inmates. Additionally, companies that hire inmates benefit from tax credits, encouraging the use of prison labor while paying very little. This creates a system where corporations and private prisons profit at the expense of both inmates and taxpayers. Number 14. Medical care in jail. Every year someone spends in prison shortens their life by about 2 years. On a larger scale, mass incarceration in the U.S. reduces overall life expectancy by 5 years. Poor healthcare in prisons contributes to this issue, with inadequate medical treatment causing the deaths of hundreds of incarcerated people each year. The COVID-19 pandemic made things worse, leading to nearly 3,000 deaths among inmates since March 2020. In 2022, the New York Supreme Court criticized the New York City Department of Correction for failing to provide basic medical care. While in December 2021, over 1,000 medical appointments were missed because corrections officers didn't escort inmates. This problem is widespread. In state prisons, over 20% of inmates with ongoing health conditions don't get the care they need. This number jumps to over 68% in local jails. Many inmates suffer from chronic issues like heart disease and diabetes, making this lack of care even more dangerous. The COVID-19 vaccine distribution was also problematic. Some states didn't prioritize incarcerated people, ignoring expert advice. New York eventually ruled that excluding them was dangerous and unfair. Inmates are also left out of Medicaid, limiting their access to necessary care. Inmates often face co-pays of $2 to $5 for medical services, though they earn only $0.14 to $0.63 per hour. This is like paying hundreds of dollars for someone making minimum wage. High co-pays can deter people from seeking necessary treatment. The National Commission on Correctional Health Care warns that these fees might harm health more than they help. Number 13. Children in adult prisons. It's a deeply troubling fact that in the United States, around 47,000 children are locked up every day. Even worse, 1 in every 6 of these children, those under 18, finds themselves in adult prisons or jails. When minors are tried and sentenced as adults, they often end up in adult facilities. This means they face the same harsh conditions and dangers as adult inmates, which is extremely harmful to a child. This troubling practice, known as trying juveniles as adults or juvenile transfer, brings up serious ethical, legal, and developmental concerns. It is a great shame for the justice system of one of the richest nations in the world. Children in adult prisons face extreme risks to their physical and mental health. They also miss out on the opportunities that age-appropriate facilities could provide, which greatly limits their chances for rehabilitation. Their lives are severely damaged before they even get a chance to start. Scientific research shows that a teenage brain is very different from an adult brain. Teenagers are not fully capable of thinking like adults until they are about 25 years old. Despite this knowledge, the justice system often seems more focused on punishment rather than helping these young people rehabilitate. As a result, the cycle of harm continues. Number 12. Pregnancy in prison. The United States has the highest rate of female incarceration in the world, with over 205,000 women currently in state and federal prisons or jails. Additionally, around 1 million women are on probation or parole. Correctional facilities, which were historically designed for men, often fail to meet the needs of incarcerated women. These needs include adequate medical care, mental health services, family support, proper bathroom and recreational facilities, and protection from sexual abuse. Many women in prison are pregnant or give birth while incarcerated. Most of these women are in their childbearing years, with a median age of 34. Between 5 and 10% enter prison pregnant, and about 2,000 babies are born to incarcerated women each year. Pregnant women in prison often face harsh treatment. They are usually shackled during transport to medical facilities, and while in labor, which is both dangerous and degrading. Though some states and the Federal Bureau of Prisons have banned this practice, many women are still shackled during these critical times. This practice is a leftover from male-focused security measures and is not genuinely needed for safety. Shackling can cause physical harm, interfere with labor, and add emotional stress. After giving birth, incarcerated mothers often face immediate separation from their newborns, usually within 24 hours. The babies are placed with relatives or in foster care, and the mothers return to prison. Some states have introduced prison-based nursery programs where mothers can keep their babies with them, but these programs vary in quality and availability. In Massachusetts, a community-based program